Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan's Prime Minister blames a foiled coup attempt on frustrated supporters of toppled President Omar al Bashir. At least a dozen people are arrested in connection to alleged plans to derail the country's fragile attempt to transition back to democracy. Also, at least 2 people are killed in Burundi as several bomb attacks hit Bujumbura. It follows a violent weekend in which blasts also went off in the town of Gitega and Bujumbura Airport. And the head of the UN's cultural wing heads out to Nigeria to visit a protected rainforest that's one of the last in the country's southwest. Like so many other precious ecosystems, Oban has come under threat from the very communities it sustained for hundreds of years. But first, Sudan's transitional government says that it's prevented an attempted coup. Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok said that plans were organised by supporters within and outside of the military of former President Omar al Bashir. Now, he was ousted by the army in 2019. The plotters reportedly planned on blocking roads and ports. Anti-coup demonstrations broke out in several cities, and Hamdok took to national television to say that there would be a crackdown on those trying to derail the country's return to democracy.
For the first time, there are people who were arrested during the implementation of the coup, and practical steps have been taken, which obliges us to show the full truth to the Sudanese people and to the world. The government, along with concerned parties, including the Committee to Dismantle the June 30th regime, will take immediate action to protect the democratic transition and to continue dismantling the June 30 regime, which still poses a danger for the transition.
Now, Sudan struggled to move past deep divisions amongst the various factions steering the transition. Plans for a legislative assembly have stalled as the country moves towards democratic elections, so far, for the moment, scheduled for 2024. At least a dozen people have been arrested over the coup. Bastien Renouy tells us more.
Sudanese government announced that the main suspects were being interrogated. The goal is to know more about their network in order to avoid any other coup attempt within the next few days, weeks, or months. It's not the first time that Sudanese transitional government is under attack since the fall of Omar al Bashir in April 2019. But this time, according to Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, who spoke on national TV during an address to the nation, it was part of a wider plan to destabilize the country. According to him, the men who took part in this coup attempt are linked to the one who were blocking the road between Khartoum and the strategic city of Port Sudan for the past few days. Port Sudan is a very important city because it's hosting the biggest port of the country. So why did these men decide to attack today? We don't know yet, but what we know for sure is that they were trying to take advantage of the situation. Sudan is in a deep economic crisis. Inflation is very high. There is still a lack of goods and services, and the government is more and more criticized for not improving the situation. The transitional government also agreed to hand over Omar al Bashir to the ICC. So maybe some of his closest allies are trying to destabilize the country in order to avoid it, but that's just a guess. We should know more during the next days when we'll have more information, especially about the identity of the plotters.
Bastien Renouy there for us. Now, at least 5 people were killed and dozens more injured in Bujumbura this week. 2 grenades went off in a parking lot in the city centre, whilst a third explosion hit a market. No one's yet claimed responsibility for the blasts, which are the latest in a string of attacks in Burundi. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
Most of those who were wounded by the grenade attacks were taken to this hospital in Bujumbura. Burundi's Prime Minister Alain Guillaume Bunyoni paid them a visit.
Le total des gens qui ont été touchés par les éclats s'élève à 104 personnes. 2 parmi ces 104 ont succombé aux blessures.
According to many witnesses, 3 people were killed. On the site of one attack, street sellers were anxious.
Umwikeza afise nk'amashakoshi ko nta muntu ashobora kwitwara mu ntoki just telefone z'ikijumu ntavuye gusoma ashobora wa mwikeza ashobora kumusoma ko nta muntu ndabona ayigize nk'ubu ngo bibona gute ubona gusa iturisi bararibaye.
On Sunday, another attack left 2 people dead in the town of Gitega, and on Saturday, the airport was targeted. That was the day before President Evariste Ndayishimiye left the country to attend the UN General Assembly in New York. The airport attack was claimed by rebel group Red Tabara, which is based in eastern Congo, but the rebels denied any involvement with Monday's grenade blasts. Analysts say some attacks this year could possibly be linked to rivalries within the ruling party.
Well, hundreds of protesters stormed Namibia's parliament as it was due to vote on a $1 billion offer from Germany, which would serve as compensation for the colonial slaughter of thousands of Herero and Nama tribespeople between 1904 and 1908. The massacres are widely seen as being the first genocide of the 20th century. About 400 people marched on the building on Tuesday in protest before the parliamentary session was abruptly adjourned. Critics say that the deal with Berlin doesn't go far enough. Long-awaited elections in Libya have been jeopardized after lawmakers passed a vote of no confidence in their government on Tuesday. The cabinet of Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dibeiba will now work as a caretaker government until a replacement is appointed. When that will be has still not been settled. However, it comes just 3 months before parliamentary and presidential elections due on December 24th. Libya has been struggling in its return to stability after a tumultuous decade following the ousting of longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. And South African prosecutors have argued that being ill was not a good enough excuse for the absence of former President Jacob Zuma as long-running corruption trial resumed on Tuesday. The 79-year-old was released from a 15-month prison sentence on medical parole 2 weeks ago. He had been due in court for proceedings which relate to fraud charges over a $2 billion arms deal taken place in 1999. Zuma had been deputy president at the time and is accused of graft and racketeering in the purchase of jets and equipment from 5 European arms firms. He's denied taking bribes from French defense giant Thales. It's also denied charges against it. And finally, UNESCO's chief headed to Nigeria recently to visit one of the last tropical rainforests in the country's southeast. The Oban forest has come increasingly under threat as locals encroach on it in search of timber and food. However, the communities responsible have lived in the areas for hundreds of years. So authorities are finding it tough to find the right balance between conservation and providing residents with opportunity and resources. Our correspondents sent us this report.
Protection is being reinforced in the Oban forest, for this nature reserve has been under the UNESCO label for a year. Here, these rangers watch over the fauna and flora. They restrict access to the area to local communities who have always survived thanks to the resources of this environment.
It's like you are coming to take away their livelihood from them. So you still have to, gradually get to them and make them understand the effects of their activities.
About 28,000 people live in this area, which has been part of the Cross River National Park since 1991. Despite successive laws, deforestation and hunting remains common practices. But for the past 10 years, an NGO has been working to change behavior. In particular, it trains these women in alternative farming techniques.
These people depend solely on the forest for their survival. They go there for food, they go there for money, they go there to get materials for shelter. So, if alternative is created for them, definitely the pressure on the forest will be reduced.
The urban forest covers 3,000 square kilometers. It is home to some endangered species. These include chimpanzees, whose natural habitat is in neighboring Cameroon. Guided by the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria, the UNESCO director came to see Abuja's effort to safeguard these nature reserves, a Nigerian experience of several decades that she intends to promote in the continent.
It's a conversation we're having at the highest level with the heads of state. We would also like to bring it to the African Union. Let's build on these successful experiences. There are others in Africa, spectacular ones too, and extend them. But once again, to do this, we must provide also solutions for the local communities.
And Africa has a lot of room for improvement. Less than 15% of UNESCO's Biosphere reserves are located on the continent.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.